Hello, good afternoon. Afternoon, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be back again at the United Nations. We're here in our capacity as chair of the G77 in China, as we're hosting and chairing a ministerial conference that we kicked off today, and which will stretch over to tomorrow to discuss a whole host of issues facing the developing world and what sort of reforms are necessary for the global south, the developing world, to achieve social SDGs and our climate goals. And I think that so far it's been going particularly well. While we've been here yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak at the open debate on multilateralism and reform at the UN, where I advocated for the UFC proposal for reform and particularly emphasize that we believe that permanent members, the right to a veto, are fundamentally undemocratic vestiges at the United Nations. They have been the reason that a whole host of issues we have been unable to address here at the United Nations, and we believe that the problem surely cannot be the solution. Surely the solution to paralysis at the United Nations cannot be more permanent members, cannot be more tyrannical, authoritarian vetoes. The solution to the gridlock of the United Nations is further democratization, further representation. But we would like to see the empowerment of the General Assembly, of the Secretary General, and the proposals of the UFC. Today, the United Nations Security Council held a meeting on counter-terrorism. I believe perhaps it could have been more inclusive, more transparent, had this too been an open debate, allowing for all countries, but particularly those such as Pakistan, who have been the victims of terrorism, who've experienced the devastation associated with terrorism, but who have also demonstrated consistently our ability to tackle this issue, be it domestically, with our successful counter-terrorism operations, first in South Waziristan, then in North Waziristan. That saw the overall security situation in Pakistan drastically improve from where it was between 2007 and 2013. When we very recently completed not one, but two action plans of the FATF, anti-money laundering action plan and the financing terrorism action plan. Both action plans were not only completed, but completed ahead of time. We are the only country to have ever simultaneously completed two action plans. We are not only incredibly proud of our achievement, but we'd like the opportunity to share our experiences with the rest of the world. Having completed our joint action plans, now Pakistan aspires to be a member of the FATF, because we believe, having gone through this experience, we now have the ability, the skills, the infrastructure in place, not only to tackle these issues domestically, but share our experiences with other countries. Another point I want to emphasize within the context of terrorism, of counterterrorism, that this is a cause that is incredibly personal to me. I have lost my mother, Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, the first female prime minister of the Muslim world, to the scourge of terrorism. She returned to Pakistan in 2007 to challenge terrorists at a time when it wasn't particularly popular to do so in Pakistan. She did so at a time when the vast majority of male political leaders within Pakistan did not have the courage to condemn terrorism, to publicly campaign against terrorism. She has survived what to this date is the largest terrorist attack in Pakistan insofar as the sheer number of victims, the October 18th, 2007 terrorist attack in Karachi. But she never gave up, nor was she deterred. And her bravery, her courage, her determination mirrors the bravery, the courage, the determination, the sacrifice of the people of Pakistan. As a Muslim, as a Pakistani, as a victim of terrorism, I believe it is time we move away from some of the Islamophobic narrative framing of this issue that took place after the awful attacks of September 11th, 2001. Because what we have witnessed from that date up until now is that terrorism, of course, knows no religion, knows no boundaries. It is important for us to consistently emphasize. I remember still growing up and hearing quotes from world leaders, such as, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in an incredibly odd situation, where me as a Pakistani, as a Muslim, as a victim of terror, I am not defined. My country is not defined, my people are not defined by the bravery of Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto and the thousands of other Pakistanis that have stood up and given their lives to these terrorists. We are defined by those who carry out these acts just because they call themselves Muslims. Till this day, yesterday, when I was contributing at the ministerial meeting, at the UN Security Council on the reform of multilateralism, and I requested the UN Security Council that the issue of Kashmir is an issue that should be solved through multilateralism, through the United Nations Security Council. In response to that, I was told that because Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, I should sit down and shut up. The fact of the matter is, Osama bin Laden is dead. He was never a Pakistani, and he does not define the people of Pakistan. He does not define the Muslim world. It is Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto and countless other leaders and people across the Muslim world who have stood up to these terrorists. If you look at the data, more Muslims have been killed in terrorist attacks from 2001 up until 2022, just in sheer quantum of victims. So we demand to be recognized as the victims, not the perpetrators of terror. For us to all to own the principle, which I believe was also in some of the language put out today from the UN Security Council, that terrorism truly has no race, has no religion. And whether a terrorist shoots up school children here in the United States, conducts a suicide attack in Pakistan, attacks anybody, any institution in my neighborhood, in India, terrorists are terrorists. And we must all work together as an international community instead of victim blaming the Muslim world, the Muslim community. We must work with them. Before I arrived here in the United States, at the United Nations, the Interior Ministry of Pakistan shared a dossier about the 2021? Yes. Terrorist attack in Johor town of Lahore. Our law enforcement agencies have conducted a thorough investigation, and in addition to those who perpetrated the attack, we believe that those who backed the attack, those that financed the attack, those that orchestrated the attack are still at large. These facilitators, financiers, perpetrators belong to my neighboring country of India. This dossier has been shared with members of the General Assembly and the Security Council, or just the Security? The members of the Security Council. Thank you. I urge the international community to help Pakistan in combating, because we can go after the people within our own territory who perpetuate the attack, but it's incredibly difficult to go after those that back, that support, that finance, that facilitate such attacks without the support of the international community. In particular, we have requested for the listing of 4 or 5 individuals, 4 or 5? 4 individuals who are associated with this attack. Unfortunately, our neighboring country has thus far been successful in thwarting our attempts at listing these individuals. We believe that the various shades, various groups that conduct terrorist activities within Pakistan, unfortunately, a significant portion of these groups are facilitated, financed, backed, and supported by a country in our neighborhood, particularly those terrorist organizations that target Pakistan's economic engagement with with China in the form of the One Belt, One Road initiatives. Everything from the attack on the Chinese consulate in Karachi to various attacks in Balochistan have been traced back to such groups. The former Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, at Sharm el-Sheikh, admitted to India's involvement supporting such groups within the context of Balochistan. Their former National Security Advisor is on the record. Sorry?
President National.
Thank you, the correction. Their President National Security Advisor is on the record as far as their support for such groups conducting attacks within Pakistan. I call upon the Indian government that these tactics must end. You cannot imagine that you will finance, that you will foster, that you will encourage such terrorist activities in my country, and then that these terrorists will be content with only conducting terrorist activities within my country. And it is about time that India and Pakistan and the international community work together to ensure that so-called non-state actors, wherever they are, wherever they conduct their nefarious activities from, wherever they target, whether they target Pakistan, whether they target any other country, that we work together to ensure that the financing, support, and facilitation of these groups come to an end. It is important for us, given the incredibly difficult and testing times that we face, that we finally, once and for all, work together to put an end to this long-standing point of irritation between our two countries. I believe that we have to draw a line in the sand and say that we have a complicated history, complicated past around this topic. Let's look to the future and ensure that going forward, no Pakistani will have to fear for their life, worry about whether their kids will come home or not. Heaven forbid if there's a terrorist attack. And that no Indian should have to worry that their family, their kids won't be able to come home as a result of some terrorist attack. I thank you all for your time.
I thank you, Foreign Minister of Pakistan.